Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Jonathan McReynolds. Thank you for joining us on Breaking Cycles, Love Your Mind. This is where we're just advocating for black men's mental health. I'm so excited to be here with my two big brothers, uncles, whatever, OGs. I don't know what you want to call them. All I know is that they are stalwarts in our community. They're amazing people, and it's such an honor to be with them. The guy to my right, listen, he was the head of the faith office for the Obama administration, and now he is over Values Partnerships. I'm so honored to hang out with Joshua DuBois.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, and then I have one of the most prominent psychologists in our community. He is always making sure that the black families, that we just do a little bit better in this generation than we did in the last generation. I want you guys to just, count yourself honored that you get to listen to Dr. Corey Yeager.
I appreciate that. Thanks, brother.
Before we even begin, I just want to say thank you to Huntsman Mental Health Institute. Thank you to Ad Council. Thank you to Values Partnerships for pulling us all together. It's such an honor to just talk to you guys. Yeah. First off, why are we here?
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Well, but first, Dr. Yeager, he's bigging us up. We have to say a little something about this man, Grammy Award-winning Jonathan McReynolds.
In your presence,
2
baby.
Billboard #1 gospel albums. I believe he has 15 Stellar
When I
Awards.
grew up,
I know he don't want to hear it, man. 4 Dove Awards.
Yeah.
And is inspiring people around the world because he's also a good dude, too, right? And so
Thank you.
we're honored to be here with you, man. And so, listen, we want to center your expertise and your stories, and I'll chime in a little bit as well. But first, as we get into this, maybe just to bring the elephant, that's in the room to the middle of the room, even as we start walking into this conversation, sometimes brothers can have a little bit of tension in dialogues like this because we don't open up a lot about our mental health, our emotional well-being, how we're doing. I just would love y'all's perspective. Why is that? Why is there that hesitance, that pause, that break before conversations like this? What do you think, John?
Well, the first thing I think of as not only a black man, but even as a Christian man, so much of the measure of our strength is about enduring something. It's not about sharing it. It's not about telling everybody about it. It's not about whining about it and playing violins. No, we're normally strong. We're normally called strong when we're just able to take it. Just take it and absorb it and not show too many effects. The problem is, even if we can kind of suppress the initial reaction, it comes out later. It comes out later in life, whether it affects our physical health or the way we deal with the next girlfriend or the next person that comes our way. I think that's just one of those things where now we're realizing, hey, maybe we need to kind of stop it now. Can we nip it in the bud? Can we address it a little earlier before it goes crazy?
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly on point. I think one of the struggles we have in terms of not engaging or discussing this idea of mental wellness, especially in the black and brown community, is that society teaches us how we should move and act. And the way it's engaged black and brown men is to silence us, to be voiceless about those struggles. That doesn't mean we don't have them. Right? We all have those relational, family struggles, work struggles. We have all those struggles, but we have been told in no uncertain terms, hey, don't talk about that. Yeah. Hey, that's not for everyone else. So be strong and hold that in. But we know after you hold things in for such a long amount of time, it begins to eat away at you. Yeah. And to Jonathan's point, it'll find a side way out. Right, you're not just going to hold it; it's going to find a way to get out, and oftentimes that comes in the look of a struggle. Yeah, and it can be a mental wellness struggle.
It's going to leak.
It's going to leak out somewhere. Can I put one more word on the table? And this may seem a little odd, but I'm thinking about myself and the context and the environments where I navigate with other men. Most centrally, my barbershop, where I am every week with some of the best friends in my life, and that's quite frankly, it feels a little corny to bring to the table when we're in the middle of conversations about football and basketball or upward mobility at work or whatever the case may be, to inject something that is about my emotional state or my mental state. It feels like how are people going to react to that? How are they going to respond to that? But the crazy thing is, on the very, unfortunately, few occasions when I've done that, it's always been well received, right? Yeah. It's always, whether it's my barber or a friend or something like that, they are immediately not only well received because they gave me some good advice, but it brings something out of them. They're able to say something about something that they went through. So sometimes it's about just breaking that ice, man, and just kind of getting into it. And, speaking of breaking the ice, the next thing I want to ask about is kind of how we all have navigated mental health and wellness in our own lives, and any personal stories about how we have maybe faced some challenges and then overcome those challenges. I can break the ice a little bit to get us started.
Break it, bro.
Yeah, and then I would love for you two gentlemen to jump in, both in your personal stories, but also Dr. Yeager as an expert. What can we learn from this? Probably many occasions where I've had to come face to face with my own mental and emotional health. Briefly when I was working in the White House, and actually towards the end of my time there, it's crazy. I had, it sounds like a small thing, but I had chronic nasal congestion, so much so that I was like addicted to the nasal spray Afrin. It was just always congested, and I had surgery to remove a bone in my nose. I had all kinds of stuff. Nothing worked. And as soon as, and it was a beautiful experience. I loved working for our first Black president, and learned so much. But it was so high stress, and I didn't realize it. When I left, my nose opened up. It was the craziest thing, man. So it's just this example of how our bodies can be impacted. And then, so that was years ago. But then a couple years ago, I was driving home from work from our office. I was on Suitland Parkway in D.C., and all of a sudden, my chest got extremely tight. And I felt like... it almost felt like my vision was beginning to darken, and my breathing was picking up. It was very shallow, and I couldn't breathe that well. I'm like, am I having a heart attack? Like, what's happening here? So I pulled over to the side of the road, and I called my wife. Probably should have called 911, but I called my wife because that's what I normally do in these moments of crisis. And she encouraged me to breathe and sort of assess and see what was going on. I ended up going to the emergency room to see, and there was nothing physical happening. I wasn't having a heart attack, wasn't having a stroke. I do encourage anyone, if you do have symptoms, you should probably get checked out in case it's one of those things. But it then happened again, and it became clear I was having anxiety attacks. Wow. And the reason I didn't immediately know that at the time, why I wasn't able to sort of self-diagnose, was because on those particular days when they happened, I was actually having a good day. Wasn't anything particularly wrong in the moment, but as I was reflecting on it after I got this diagnosis of repeated anxiety attacks, I realized it was the accumulation of things over time. Right? It was a stressful time. We have young kids and navigating them, leading two companies, and just family drama, all kinds of stuff. And wasn't sleeping well, wasn't, exercising, wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. And it all came to a head in that moment where literally felt like I was having a heart attack. And so that was a wake up call for me, that it wasn't about having interventions in a moment, but putting into place practices that could reduce my stress over time. And, some of those practices were getting outside more, going for, walks every day, putting boundaries in my life so that, in the midst of an already full schedule, I'm not filling it up with things that are not absolutely required, and just really kind of slowly trying to reduce stress over time. It's been a while since I've had one. It may happen again. I hope it doesn't. I pray it doesn't, but it may happen again. But that's something that I'm constantly having to manage to stay in front of. So yeah, that's a little bit of my mental health story. I'd love to hear Jonathan's. Dr. Yeager, is that anxiety piece common? Is that, what do you think? Yeah.
I would say that that's one of the more common things that we struggle with as men, is this anxiousness. And what is anxiety? Anxiety is being concerned or ruminating about what might happen in the future, right? We overthink what this could happen, or what about this, and all of those things. So you talked about setting boundaries, critically important. But I think one thing that we need to understand about boundary setting, it's easy to set boundaries, harder to enforce boundary, right? I can just say, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to let people do that. That setting of a boundary is really just kind of words. Those are words. But how do you enforce those boundaries when moments come up that someone's pushing that boundary and you have to say, hey, I'm not allowing that? much tougher to enforce those boundaries.
Wow.
But this idea of the barbershop, I love that you bring that up, Joshua, because my doctoral work was saying, hey, in the Black and brown community, we don't engage therapy at a high rate. But what we do engage is we talk about our struggles when we go to the barbershop, to the beauty salon.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Because what we innately know is that therapeutic engagement doesn't have to be with a therapist. It can be with your friends. It can be at the barbershop, because what you're seeking is the relief of pressure around these stories that you have. I have all of these struggles and stories, and I need to get them out. Well, innately, you know that when you tell those stories in the barbershop, for instance, they're not going to fix them. That's not going to fix the issue.
Yeah.
But so why are you telling them? Because it relieves pressure.
It gets it out.
And the research tells us one of two ways that we can relieve pressure. We can talk like you do at the barbershop. We can write. Right? Those are two of the most important ways in which we can engage and release those boundaries. And Jonathan, we can use music to engage, to loosen up some of those pressures that we have. So I think those things connected to what you just brought forward, Joshua, are quite important because, and I'll stop at this point, we know about 25% of Black males engage with therapeutic practice compared to their white peers at about 40%. When you think about that, that's a big gap in engaging and supporting and finding help. So as I hand it to Jonathan to talk about those pieces that he has, this idea of what the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ad Council and Values Partnerships has come together to do in this Love Your Mind campaign. This is an extremely important engagement that we have. So that this loveyourmindtoday.org, utilizing those resources and skills that we have to support us, really important. But Jonathan, I'll let you talk
And
more.
as Jonathan jumps in, Doctor, that's so dope to distill 2 steps that you can take. You got to talk it out or you got to write it out. And if you're going through something and you're not doing one of those things, then like you said, it's bottled up.
Yeah.
It's bottled up.
You know,
yeah.
I always said, so much of, particularly my life, and I've had to live a certain life, kind of maybe in the spotlight a little bit, and people making sure you don't make mistakes. Old mothers wagging their finger, trying to see if I went R&B yet. I don't know, but either way, it's all kind of like sometimes holding your breath.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you breathe naturally, then the breath. But now, if you hold it for a good minute, now when it comes out, it's violent. It's like, whoa, that's not even in your character.
Wow.
But because you held it in so long and you didn't release that pressure, now, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, we just see a lot of that in our community. And I certainly saw that in my own life where, I'm actually kind of a mild-mannered, chill guy. That's actually me. If you see me up screaming and cussing at everybody, you like, okay, what's wrong with y'all? Yeah. And it's because, so much of my life, and I think a lot of fellas can relate to this. A lot of what we have to do is act like everything's okay all the time. Yeah. Whether it is in front of your kids, whether it's in front of some crazy baby mamas, whether it's in front of fans, whatever it is, you always have to kind of keep up a little bit of an act that everything's okay.
Yeah, the facade.
Now, craziness is going back there.
Yep.
The band has played the wrong song in the wrong key.
Yep.
The lights are, whatever.
Yep.
People are going crazy in comments, and I'm just acting like I don't see that.
That's right.
I'm acting like they didn't just call me ugly. Yeah. I'm acting like that person didn't just let me down. I'm acting like that just to get through. And we'd be surprised just how much we suppress over time. And so how can that show up? Well, anxiety. Right. It can show up in physical ailments. Man, I feel like there was a season of my life, maybe last year, where every time I went to the doctor, different doctors, chiropractors, regular physical doctors, therapists, anything, it was all stress. Every single thing, every cold I had, everything was, it's probably stress. And so it's amazing how all of that comes out. And I think for me, after all that kind of accumulates, for me, and I think it's just, maybe it's in my bloodline and everything else, it starts to manifest as depression. It starts to manifest as just, you know what? I'm tired. I'm sad. I don't really want to do anything. The way I'm looking at life is so cloudy. It's so murky. There is no kind of way to kind of reach through this fog. Now I still might have to do stuff. We still have to go to work. We still have to do what we have to do. But I think that in general, there just feels like there's this low-hanging cloud that's just sitting there waiting for us to come back home. You know what I'm saying? Now go do what you got to do. But when you come back, I'll be here.
Yeah. And let me say something to that point, because you sharing that triggers me to think about something. This idea of grace, right? So you think about the band off key, they're playing something different, and you know it, but you have to pretend like nothing's happening. You're giving grace. I'm going to give them grace. They messed up, but I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen. So we're really good as human beings at giving everyone else grace, but we don't give ourselves that same grace, right? We don't give that grace to ourselves. That I need space. I need space and opportunity to be still, and I need to be able to call things out that I'm not calling out, because if I don't, to your point, Jonathan, it bottles itself up.
Well, I'm a man. I gotta take care of stuff, man.
That's right.
The buck stops with me.
That's what we've been taught and told, and to some degree we live that. But we also have to realize we're human beings. That the fact remains that we're going to have struggles. We're going to have struggles day to day. So how are we addressing those in a way that doesn't allow it to bottle itself up? Because if it bottles itself up enough, it's got to come out, as we said earlier.
And Doc, I think the grace we give ourselves, or too often don't give ourselves, is important. This is going to sound a little weird. This is not a haughty thing. But I also think not only are we too hard on ourselves, but we also don't build ourselves up enough. I'm always on this process of self-improvement. How can I be better at X? How can we achieve more at work in this way? How can I fix this thing and achieve this next milestone? And sometimes I have to pause and say, you know what? I am a man of God, or I am a good husband. I'm actually a good husband.
Yeah.
I'm a good father. I'm a good friend. I'm not perfect, but I'm a good friend. I try to show up for people in my life. I've made progress in certain areas where I used to not be strong. I've made progress in them. And so, there's this layer of just kind of being down on ourselves, or focusing on everything we're getting wrong or need to do next, as opposed to, God says we're fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And so, and if he says that about us, then I should be able to look in the mirror and be like, hey, listen, I know there's a bunch of stuff you want to fix, but you are a good dude. And let that, just kind of be more. I don't know if that makes sense, John.
I think that, again, speaking from the Black experience, speaking from what we've lived out, what we've watched happen, plus especially the generations before us, you could end up in jail or dead because of your mediocre moments.
Yeah.
You have to be excellent.
Excellent. Yeah.
Black excellence, we love it. You were part of the Barack Obama administration. Black excellence all over the place.
Yeah.
We are allowed now to be excellent. What we aren't always allowed to do is be mediocre.
Yep.
Just sitting down
be okay.
in the driveway, just sitting there, I don't know, smoking a blunt. You might die for that.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, true,
you know what I'm saying? Like so I think that, as Black men, we do put on this mantle, this kind of weight of having to be kind of excellent on top of things, or else.
Yep.
And so, one thing I gotta say this to all the ladies out there, especially our Black ladies.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of y'all. You know why I'm jealous? Because they figured out long, warm baths. They figured out red wine. They figured out I'm going to stand in the mirror and tell myself I am somebody. They figured out some stuff that we reject.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel, it's corny, it's feminine, it's whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't
That's so
feel
true,
like
man.
we should be able to do
That's
that.
the story we've told.
That's what we tell ourselves. And they are living 10 years longer.
So let me say to that point, we talk about loving your mind, love, calming your mind. This idea of being okay with who I am as a man, right? It's really almost an absent thought for us. That I have to be a good dad, I have to be a good this at work and all of these things. But before I can be any of those things, I have to be a good Corey to Corey and be okay with Corey with all his faults and his blemishes, that I'm okay as I stare and look in that mirror, that I'm okay with who I am. And I'm not perfect, and none of us are. So how do we begin that journey
that's good.
towards being okay is a process.
And you have to be okay with you whether or not other people are okay with you. And this is what, like, I have a phenomenal wife. My kids are amazing. But I realized I was getting, too deep into, I only felt good about myself when they were affirming things about me, right? When as opposed to, and because sometimes they may not be affirming of me. And maybe I may have done something wrong, or I may feel like I've missed the mark, but I still got to be okay with myself. I still have to be able to say, like, yes, you may have not reached these milestones or done these things that you would have liked to do, but you're still okay.
Have you been watching social media lately?
No,
I don't know.
Try not to.
I live there. See, y'all get to leave. Okay, I gotta be there all the time. And so I see a lot of stuff, and what I'm seeing a lot is okay. So we know that it's like a podcast revolution out there. Okay, everybody got a podcast. I'm about to open up one right now. As a matter of fact, this is my first episode of the podcast.
Welcome to Jonathan.
I don't even know what the title is.
Yeah, breaking
cycles.
But I started it right now. Either way, everybody has one, and what we're seeing is you're seeing a lot of, particularly black men, you're starting to see the accumulation of that right there. And so what you're seeing is, because we don't have self-love, and we haven't really figured out how to even use that muscle to kind of just tell ourselves that we are God's creation, we are the son, whatever you want to call it. So what we're feeling is a very unconditional love. Now, in the podcast land, we attribute that unconditional love that we feel to what a lot of women give us. But actually, we give it to ourselves first. We give ourselves a very conditional love.
Conditional love.
That's right.
A very
That's right.
What have you done for me lately?
With ourselves.
We do that to ourselves, man.
That is
so we get mad at when we feel like ladies, they only gonna date us if we're 6 feet and up. They only gonna date us if we got enough money. They only gonna date us if we this and that with that. But honestly, we're really sometimes, because ladies y'all do be treating us like that. But also there is a level of, we haven't been able to engender or generate any of that for ourselves either. That we're good.
Yes.
And you know what? Let's
Where
not
would
be.
you find that?
You go ahead. Sorry.
Where would you find that? Right. So how would we find the ability to tell ourselves that we're good if it's not been mimicked to us? If I didn't grow up hearing how smart I was and how solid I was and how worthy I was, I didn't grow up with that.
It's good.
Right. So if I didn't hear those words, how would I just naturally create that for my own? I think is the struggle. Go ahead.
And even in positive households, we didn't necessarily hear that, because it was all focused on achievement, and that's not our parents. Look at this journey we've been on in this country. We had slavery, and then a little bit of a bright point, and then Reconstruction, and then civil rights, and then a generation after civil rights, where we're finally starting to a little bit get our feet underneath us. And in that space, that 60s, 70s, and 80s, where many of us grew up, our parents would just focus on making sure that we got established and got to a place. They didn't necessarily have all of these tools to empower us to love ourselves, right? I mean, the language didn't exist. But now we can start, doing that for ourselves and also for our kids.
So then can we not, Jonathan, Joshua, can we not then turn that? Because I think sometimes we struggle with saying we haven't had it. We don't have it now. So then what's left to do? For instance, my son, I didn't grow up hearing I love you in my household. I never heard it. My mom and dad loved me, but I didn't hear it. So as I came together and had my children with my wife, she didn't hear it either. So we made it an intentional decision to say, hey, we didn't either one get that. We want something different for these boys. How will we turn the tide now and say, I love you every time? My sons literally will leave from the living room to go upstairs, not even leaving the house, and say, I love you.
Wow.
Why?
What does that mean for them?
Tell me, in one generation, we turned the tide. In one generation, we didn't have it,
Yeah.
But we made an intentional, asserted effort to do something quite different.
That's good.
So how, and that's not easy. That's not an easy
But
move.
it is possible.
But it is possible, but it has to come with intentionality.
Yeah.
We have to sit down and say, all right, what did I not get? What do I wish I could have? And I don't have to just wish that I had it. I can do something about it in a bite-sized approach.
Yeah,
You know, we did that just with material things.
Yes.
Because you got to understand,
Yes.
you know,
that's good.
That's right.
we came out of, you know, a generations where, you know, black folks could not do all the things that they wish they could have done.
So we got
for
the
their kids.
PlayStation, man.
So we
Yeah,
did
yeah,
do that.
yeah, play some.
You know, we got 10 pairs of Jordans by the time
Yeah, yeah.
we're 10.
That's
and
right.
So,
I did.
Well, I did. But
I was wearing LA Gears, man. We was broke.
you got Shaqs.
Oh man, hey, listen,
Shaq.
listen,
Hey,
man.
But still, but yeah, now it's like, okay, maybe in addition to, but definitely more significantly than having the money and some of the means that you didn't have in the previous generation, and setting your kids up with a little more wealth instead of debt.
Yes.
We also have a debt of love and affirmation that we need to fix as well. Can I ask y'all a question?
Yeah, please.
Just as fathers,
Yeah.
you know, as people who are, you know, teaching the next generation, what kind of stuff do you take? What you know, they say, you know, you kind of eating the meat but spitting out the bones.
Yeah.
Because there is kind of that bipolarity when it comes to things where we actually do have money, but I want y'all to know how it feels to not.
Yeah. How do you split the two?
And this is how I'm thinking. We actually do have therapy. We actually do have outlets for you to talk.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I want y'all to be as tough as we were
That's right.
when we didn't have that.
Man.
Well,
How do you do that?
so I take a couple things. One, I try to start with myself. I realize that a lot of the bottling up that happens, or the explosion of emotions that we see in kids, is modeled by parents. And you know, many of our households and communities, it starts with a parent who thinks that the way to correct is by raising your voice, or it's a whooping or something like that, as opposed to like pausing and getting people to talk through whatever just happened with them, how you're responding to it, and so forth. So we try to pause and get people to get our kids to vocalize, why are you upset right now? Why did this happen? And then we're not perfect. I mean, sometimes I raise my voice, or, you know, there may be forms of discipline that I wish could have been a little softer, but we're trying to model healthy conversations in the way that we correct. The other thing we try to do is start our day, man, with my kids do a mantra. They say, my eldest is August. He says, "My name is August DuBois. I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm courageous, I'm handsome, and I'm loved." And so just to make sure that every day he knows that he's grounded in those things. And that love is not conditional based on whatever they're achieving or not achieving in a particular moment in their life. My homegirl, Joteka, her dad, they have a great relationship, and he always says to her, "You're my horse. Win, lose, or draw, you're my horse. I don't care if you come in last. I'm riding with you the whole way." And so trying to remove this sense of the love is conditional on what you're achieving. Instead, we're going to be here with you no matter what. High, low, no matter what, we're going to be standing with you.
I love that, and I think that we should start to utilize a lot of those ideas more often. One thing that I do with my sons, having 5 boys, is a handful. So I seek to be curious with my babies. Right? I'm be curious with you instead of being all-knowing parent. Right? Because there's sometimes parents, I grew up with all-knowing parents. Hey, this is what you're going to do. No,
That's
that ain't
good.
the way to
That's
do it.
good.
No. But being curious, because if we can really think through this, my babies have so much to teach me. That instead, it's not always me teaching them.
That's good.
Right? So being curious with them, saying, "Son, explain that to me." Because what we know is if we can put our children in an expert position where I'm one down and they're one up, that they love that, right? I get to teach daddy something. Pops don't know this. Pops doesn't understand this language. Pops doesn't understand what's important to a 17-year-old. So not just coming from an all-knowing space, but from a curious space, and allow them to teach me. And the more I allow them to teach me, the more they'll allow me to teach them.
Yeah.
Right?
And Doc, that's good. And I think we can be curious with our kids. we could also be curious with brothers in our lives, our friends. We could ask a question, how you doing? No, I know you're good. You know, I'm making it. I'm trying to be like you. That's the sort of things we say at the surface level. But that follow-up question, no, I mean, I'm serious. How are you doing right now? You got it, man. You got it. Trying to be like you. You know what I'm saying? But it's about that follow-up question. No, I know you're doing great, but I know you've been navigating some stuff. I know XYZ happened to you. I know you're going through this divorce. Or I know, tell me about what's happening on the job right now, whatever the case may be. Having that same curiosity about the men in our lives, the friends in our lives, and allowing them to open up so that they can get it out. You said you got to either speak it or write it. Yeah. We need to create some spaces to write it or to speak it. Question for you all, just bringing this into the faith landscape. And Jonathan, I'm fascinated to hear your perspective on this. And you too, Dr. Yeager, what does faith have to do with mental health? Are there ways that your faith has strengthened your mental health and wellness? Does it have a negative impact? Because I don't know about you, but when I was leading the faith-based office, I was almost a professional Christian, and that could push me away from mental health as well. How do you react to that? How does faith connect to mental health?
Oh man, there's so many things I could say.
Yeah,
there's so many things I could say because faith does something for you, and then the people of faith do something else. The culture of faith does something else. So the first thing, and maybe the most important thing, I mean, I could talk about just how unsettling a career of telling people to settle can be. How unpeaceful a career of trying to spread peace can be. Yeah. Of course, I could talk about that. But I think what's really important is what you were saying is the generating of that. So of that affirmation of that love. Where does that come from? So we maybe didn't get it from fathers. We didn't get it from moms. We didn't get it from culture. We can't listen to our mainstream music all the time and find love and affirmation and our greatness and excellence. We ain't going to find it much in there. We're going to find everything else. But so where do we get that from? And I think that's the most important thing about faith is that it's giving you an origin story. It's giving you a bloodline. It's giving you an identity. It's giving you a place to generate all of that love and affirmation from. One thing that I was always taught, I let you guys know that my father, he just passed actually last night. And the thing is, I'm standing here and I'm probably able to sit here because I haven't really processed even how I feel about it because we weren't the closest ever. So, growing up kind of in I wouldn't say fatherless, but father-light childhood. I think that what I was always told is, Jonathan, you're going to be a great guy. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. You're going to be the father that you never had. Here's the problem. Where do I generate all of that affection and knowledge and, as you said, like this all-knowingness? Where do I get that from? That's where faith comes in. I have a God who's actually omniscient, all-knowing. So maybe I'm not, but I do have one. And I do have this sense that I am loved. That for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And all these other things, all things work together for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. All these statements of love, that's my source. That's where I get it from. That's where if and when I have kids, if they get a very loving environment, I will have to credit the faith as where I generated that from.
That's good, man.
Hey, to your point, and I think that this word faith, critically important in all aspects of life. Hebrews 11 calls faith, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So I might not have seen it. Right?
I hope for it.
Yes.
That's powerful. I never even thought about it like that.
So if we are hopeful, and that's not an easy thing to do in our community. Because we don't see a lot of hopefulness around us. Right? This journey has, the only reason that we sit where we are is that we are the dreams of our ancestors. We are the dreams of all of our Obama and that administration was the dream of ancestors from 400 years ago. So that hope has pushed and driven us. But the hopelessness that is surrounding us is heavy. It's so heavy. So what will we do to engage one another to feed the faith that we need? We have to feed that faith. Faith doesn't just happen. That is built on trust, and I'm seeing things that are continuously happening in a positive way that allow me to keep driving forward. This is the root of that hopeful.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what we need more of, to your point. That's what because we don't have it.
Jonathan, you said something that's been blowing my mind since you said it. Been messing with me, man. And I don't even know if you intended to, but I think you just created a whole nother.
I say a lot of things,
Jonathan. Well, let me tell you what you said. Let me tell you what you said, man. You said you were talking about your father, and we know this is you are navigating this in real time right now. But you said you didn't say father less. You said father light, and that messed with me, man, because I feel like a lot of folks are on that spectrum where it's not just absent versus present. What did you mean by that? Whether in your life or just to talk, what did you mean by that, father light?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to a certain extent, we're all affected by our fathers some kind of way, either by their absence or by their presence. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes it can be bad. There's some things bloodline wise, even when it comes to mental health, bipolar, depression, that I don't even think they didn't even diagnose that past generation of black men with, that we do have to deal with. There are some levels of them being around, but why didn't y'all come around on your own accord? Why did I have to ask? You know what I'm saying? Why did I have to ask for you? So there's just so many different things. I think for me, one thing that messed with me when I was growing up, I actually had a good group of uncles and godfathers and, even my pastor from afar that kind of fathered me. And I actually didn't have much of an issue. I actually felt like, I guess I don't have a dad. That's fine. You know what really jacked me up? Was when I finally said to my mom, hey, who's this dude on the check? Or can I meet this guy? And I finally met him. And it bothered me that he only lived about 3 miles away.
Wow.
It bothered me that I had to make the first move.
Yeah.
It bothered me that I was the one who had to set things in motion. And a father, the older guy, the one who should have had the sense, didn't do that for me. You know what I'm saying? And so then as I got older, it just started, that's when things start to kind of mess with you. You know what I'm saying? They start saying, well, you're good enough for this, but you weren't good enough for dad to just show up. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those intrinsic things that maybe if I keep doing things, I'll get affirmation. But just me being a 7-year-old wasn't enough.
Wow.
And so I think that, in a lot of ways, maybe we can't say, all right, dad didn't do nothing. He didn't show up. No, my dad, he got me a 94 Taurus to drive around. You know what I'm saying, in high school. Now, remember, so that means it was about 12, 13 years old. But still, it was fine. I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? Once we took off the Mississippi tires and put Chicago tires, I stopped slipping around.
Did you put some rims on it then?
No, I didn't do nothing to it. All I did was to put the cassette tape in so I could use my phone MP3 player. But either way, so he did some things. He took care of some of his responsibility. But a lot of times, particularly in that generation before us, their idea of what their responsibility was very limited. And so I think that for a lot of us, we can't say that father wasn't there at all. But emotionally or mentally or spiritually, he wasn't covering. So it was more of a father light.
Doc, what you think about this light thing, man?
I think it's deep. He's entered some things that it got me thinking very much about the importance of fatherhood, especially in the context of the black community. One of the things that we talk about psychologically with fathers, it can be mothers, but specifically about fathers in our communities, is that many times they can be physically present and psychologically absent. So the physical being of the father, I see him, I know who he is, I can touch it, he's right there. But psychologically, the support, the emotional support, the guidance, all those things that we think that comes along with fatherhood is absent. Right? So then a young person, especially a young person, begins to ask themselves the question, why he don't do anything with me? Why he disengaged with me? One of the struggles I've seen with many young black males that have that physical presence, psychological absence, dad is maybe down the street raising another family. Engaging with another family, and there may be a young man that he's fathering that is close to my age. So now this young black boy is seeing that, saying, I was not worthy. It now has an impact on who I am as a young man and as an adolescent. I must not have been worthy of what he's doing and giving there. So I think that this idea of father light is a critical importance for us to understand in the black community. The last thing I'll add is, I think one of the things, we talked about curiosity earlier. How do we, especially as though my dad died when I was 15, we're very close, but at 15 he's now gone. When I thought I probably needed him the most, he was now gone.
That's another type of father light.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's why it hit me so heavy. So one of the things that I became curious about, it probably drove me, the loss of my father probably drove me to do the work that I'm doing. I began to be curious about when these fathers that may be struggling to handle the business of fatherhood, what was their connection to their fathers? Very quickly that's where I go as a therapist. Where was dad with his dad? All of a sudden we start to uncover stories of, well, his dad really wasn't around. And so now, where did he learn? It goes back to the point that we said, at some point we must stop the pattern.
But we can stop. Here's the thing. I'm going to say something a little hopeless, but then hopefully hopeful. One, I think we have accepted too much of this in our community. And this is, we're so careful to not be judgmental and, to take into account the historical context. All of that is true. We are on the tail end of a 400-year line of just absolute oppression and suppression of black manhood, black masculinity. All kinds of factors outside of our control are absolutely the case. And we've got to draw the line and say that this type of this pattern of not full presence, of being down the street with another family, and there's your family is somewhere else, of not processing down a path towards meaningful long-term relationships, i.e. marriage where possible, right? And that's not possible for everybody, and I get that. But that we've got to draw the line. That's not a conservative thing to say or a progressive. That's not a Republican, Democrat. Right. It's just what's in the best interest of the next generation of our community, of ourselves. Like, this is, we've got to stop making things that in other spaces are unacceptable. We've got to stop saying that they're acceptable and making excuses. And again, that's not a bootstrap kind of, it's just, this is what is, when we talk about where we want to be at the end of our lives, ideally we're in a place where we are surrounded by as many healthy relationships as possible with a partner, with kids, and so forth. We can't do that if we accept all of this stuff. Now, that's the hopeless part. The hopeful part, though, is, Doc, you said something powerful earlier. You said your parents didn't necessarily say, I love you, a lot or at all. But you have changed that in one generation. One generation, you've turned the corner where your kids now know that they're loved and will say, I love you to the next generation. Right. And so, John, you talked about the father light wounds. I have my own that I've navigated, but I'm implementing something completely different in my house. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily take 3, 4, 5, 6 generations to change this. We can do this now. We can take the model of our Heavenly Father, tools, and I want to get to that next, practical tools that we can pick up, and then implement that in our circles right now, and turn the corner, man. Turn the corner for our brothers, for our friends, for our kids, for our partners, whatever the case may be.
But I just want to say, when it comes to the whether it's fatherless or father light, I love that you brought the example of a father that just passed.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that we realize there's a lot of ways to get to father lightness.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not just somebody, being a terrible guy.
That's right.
It's not just a Rolling Stone. It's not just, one kind of way that you can get there.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of ways, in my family, I don't want to say too much of their business, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind too much. But, one of the fathers in my family committed suicide. And so now that I'm talking to his son and saying, how do you feel? Does it ever cross your mind? He actually said something to me that kind of blew me away. He said, I really didn't get that much from him. I'm thinking that unlike me, he did have a good, present, joyful, from what I remember, joyful, providing, admirable guy in the house. Yeah. But because of his mental issues and how he took himself out, committing suicide, coming out of, what was it, Desert Storm with PTSD and other stuff that happened, a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Now he has created a father-like experience for the next generation, and it didn't come just because, he liked to smash everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I just really appreciate you, bringing to bear, because what we don't realize sometimes is that our culture, the whole culture, is fatherless or father-like. Even if you have a dad in the house, just by the stuff you watch, by the friends you have, by the music you listen to, you are drinking the Kool-Aid of an otherwise father-like culture. You know what I'm saying? And so, I got my dad. My dad is great. Cool, but every person you listen to didn't have theirs.
It's coming in. It's coming out.
Cool, but every show that you watch is talking about, you see men acting stupid and ladies acting stupid, men looking for confidence and ladies looking for security because they didn't have that. You're watching that, learning those ways. Man, you're still eating from a father-like culture,
society.
Yeah.
So, a couple of statistics I think are critically important there. That 80% of the suicides that happen in our black community are black men. 80%, 8 out of every 10 of those suicides are black men. That 70% of our households in the black community are one parent. 7 out of 10
that's a lot.
Have one parent. So only 3 out of 10 of our households have two parents, black community, 2-parent households.
And what's wild about that, and we spent a lot of time with the various fatherhood programs and so forth. Sometimes fathers are present, but they're not counted in the house. Because they're in and out. It's the light thing. And their hearts sometimes can be there, and they can show up for practice. It's, like I said, 3 small kids, and so I'm bouncing from gymnastics to soccer. I can't tell you at dance practice, it's 70% dads, and many of those are dads who are not in their household, but they are doing pickup and drop off from dance, right? And
I would say our generation, it feels like it's got to be a little better.
It is better, and that's why the people have sort of complicated that notion in a positive way a little bit, because it's not that we're completely absent. It's just that life happened and things got real complicated, and so now it's about what do you do given that complexity, I would say.
I would wonder what percentage of those fathers that are at dance and all those engagements that may not be married, I wonder how the class breakout would work with that. Right? Yeah. Right? I wonder how poverty impacts that.
Well, think about the number one thing people are arguing about. It is finances, right? And this gets back to mental health as well, because what is the biggest stressor? It's our finances. And so part of what we have to learn to do as a culture and as a community is, even when there are financial pressures, how do you find peace? Yes. How do you communicate? How do you learn to go through something but not let that thing break you? And you're getting frequently finances. That can not only save your own mental health, it may save your marriage. Yes. It may save your relationship that could become a marriage if you navigate through that in a healthy way.
And your life.
And your life.
Right? The third leading cause of death in the black community, suicide.
Yeah. And part of it is, man, we set these outsized material expectations of sort of what we should be doing in a particular, and they shift every time you get something else. Your goal is now the next thing, and then you get to that place, and your goal is now the next thing. You get back to what we talked about earlier. What does it mean to just be okay with yourself?
That's tough,
man.
It's tough.
It is tough.
It's a full-time job.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's again for the the younger generation. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you want to make that line, 40 and below, 30 and below, 20 below, whatever.
Yeah.
It's such a world of comparison.
That's right.
And I think that, every American has to talk about a little bit, whether you're black or not, what social media and the phone does to our idea of the world, because we're not even just comparing growing up in the hood, southeast side of Chicago, you know what I'm saying? Maybe one dude did have Jordans.
Yeah, or a starter jacket or something.
I had my Shaqs. Yeah. I had some LA lights. Okay?
That was me,
that was the comparison.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Between your Jordans and my LA lights.
Yeah.
But now when you turn on your phone, I'm now comparing myself to people in a whole nother city, with a whole nother setup, with a whole nother sense of, just context, money, everything. Right. And so I think that as men, where keeping up with the Joneses was like kind of a cool, novel thing to say back in the day. Yeah. Now it's truly our lives.
It's our lives. But here's what happens, man. It's crazy.
Joneses, Kardashians, everybody.
Now I've reached the point, and I would say this to the young brothers out there, that at some point I was comparing myself to others, and that's where I wanted to direct my energy, is trying to achieve and get what other people had. Now I compare myself to people who have a whole lot of peace in their life, man.
Seriously,
I have mentors. Smiles. I think about my man Big O, Otis Gamble, 84 years old. He's been cutting hair at Mason's Barbershop in D.C. since the late 50s, and he just has so much peace in his life right now. Army veteran, worked for a WSSC, the water company here in Washington, retired well, and is just able to enjoy life. I'm like, man, I'm trying to be like Big O, man. I don't need, because I know a lot of people with a lot of money. And before we had achieved certain milestones, I used to roll my eyes when people said this, like, oh, you can have money and be miserable. But it is a million% true. Some of the most miserable people I know are well-resourced people, right? And so now it's about, how can I achieve peace and margin and healthy relationships? I don't know, the wall my ladder is up against just got shifted to a completely different place, because I climbed up the other one. I looked around. I'm like, man, I don't like nobody up here. I want to go over there and climb up that other ladder.
So when I talk about comparisons, I think there's a couple of things. I seek to compare myself only to the version of me yesterday. I don't want to compare to anybody. I really don't. What was I yesterday? Am I better than I was yesterday? If I'm not, then I got some work to do, because I want to be better every day. If I can be better each and every day, that means I'm better as a daddy. That means I'm better as a therapist, because Corey's better than he was yesterday. So the part about the social media world that we live within, it is a fake facade comparison, because that social media is only given the positive nature of my life. Right. When I post on social media, I ain't telling you what me and my wife argued about. I'm not posting that.
That's right.
I'm posting about the beauty and what I did and who I'm engaged with and been working with and hanging out with. I'm posting all this positivity. So if someone seeks to compare to what I'm posting, you have a tough time, because everything I put up there.
Because I don't even compare to that guy.
I'm not
even that dude.
Hey, say that though. Oh, that's real spit right there. Yeah. Even my real life doesn't compare to what I'm posting.
And here's something wild.
That's real.
Here's something wild, John. Correct me if I'm misrepresenting this, but when you said kind of that low level depression, that sort of the kind of always the undercurrent piece, you were talking about that recently in the last couple of years, right? You said, when I told my story about anxiety, that's in the last couple of years. These are post having achieved some big things in life. If you would have told the young me, oh man, 21-year-old Josh, you're going to work in the White House, leave the White House, write a best-selling book, run 2 companies, and your biggest moments of anxiety will be after all of that? That's crazy. After your Grammys, after the awards. And so we say this to people because just trust us. You got to pursue this wellness more than your. I don't even know what the conclusion to that is. But
the way I talk about it, and I'm actually writing something right now, and I actually speak about the mountain versus the valley. Now, in general, whenever we talk about God, what we do,
No.
We look
He's
up.
always up there.
Yeah.
Up is divine.
Yeah.
So we always want to get up. But if you actually look at the top of a mountain, there's no life. It's scarce. It's thin air. It's cold. Where's all the lushness? Where's the river? Where's the green? It's in the valley.
You about to make me shout in here, man.
Well, buy the book when it come out. But you know what I'm saying is, it's the climb that we all feel like we're supposed to be a part of all the time. There actually is a call to come down. To the valley, to where you don't have titles. You aren't CEO in the valley. All you are is son.
Man, you would not believe what God did. And it's a small little wink. Sometimes I think he just not the big stuff, but the little wink.
Keep going. It's going to get up in the book.
Literally, before this conversation yesterday, I'm a nerd. I look up all kinds of crazy facts, and for some reason, I was looking up mountain climbing, and I was looking up the deaths on Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world. Yeah. Every year, dozens of people pass away because there's no oxygen. They call it the death zone at the top. Yes. So you're saying the height of all heights at the top is a death zone.
Yeah.
But in the valley, what you just said, there's lushness.
That's where people live.
That's where people live.
Civilization
I looked that up yesterday. We did not plan this. This was not coordinated. I promise you that. I was looking that up yesterday. That's powerful, man.
Where's your guy, the barber? Otis? What did you say his name?
Otis Gamble. Yeah, DC. Yeah.
I bet he's in the valley.
He's chilling.
He's in the valley.
Relaxing,
right? He's relaxed down here where it's calm.
Here's the crazy part. I had to, because, when I was first, starting to come up with that concept, and I would say mountain and valley, people would say, well, you're high on the mountain, you're successful. And I was like, no, actually, the mountain mindset has nothing to do with how much success you have. And the valley mindset has nothing to do with how much success you have. You can be high up in Grammy land and in White House land and in Pistonville. Yeah. You can be high up and still learn to live as just the son of God in the valley.
Son of God.
On the other hand,
humble.
You could have absolutely no success to your name and still constantly be grinding and hustling and trying to figure out how to get up on the top, and you messed yourself up because you don't have the balance of assignment versus identity. Wow. Doing versus being.
There's no oxygen up there.
And there's no oxygen after a while, bro.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And so
that's awesome, man.
When the book coming
out? I don't know when I finish writing. I'm on chapter 6 now.
Hey, let me write the forward.
That's awesome.
Hey, don't forget. You heard that. You heard that.
Committed. Dr. Yeager will be writing this forward.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
If you don't see Dr. Corey Yeager on it, then he lied.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, speaking of you for a moment, as we come to our close, let's say some brothers are watching this, they're inspired, and they say, man, okay, I'm going to take a step. I want to do something. I'm going through anxiety. I'm going through depression. I lost my dad. I have father wounds, father lightness around me, and I want to do something. What are some starting points? What are some places that we can go, resources that exist, whether it's this campaign and others? What are some starting points? And I'll come to Jonathan to share.
I'm going to start with what brought us all together, this idea of love your mind.
Yeah.
So the resource, the idea of going to the space of loveyourmindtoday.org, there's tons of resources and ideas and ways in which to engage, talk about anger, family issues, all kinds of components in which you can kind of figure out what resources do I need. But if I'm talking about a day-to-day engagement, from my understanding, I think that we've got to do a better job of the relationship that we have with ourselves. Right? That's really what that love your mind is all about. What is the relationship that I have with me? Right? And I don't think that we slow down and think about that enough. What is that relationship? We get concerned about the relationship we have with everyone else. I wrote a book, How Am I Doing? 40 Conversations to Have with Yourself.
Wow.
And the book is talking about how do you start to acquaint yourself and be curious with who you are.
With yourself.
How you came to be who you are. Understand that before I can try to understand every other relationship I have in my life. I think the most fundamental way, the most fundamental resource that we can do just on our own in ourselves is to understand and to be aware of our self-talk. We're talking to ourselves all the time. As I'm talking right now, both of you are talking to yourselves.
Yep.
Right? So we always are talking to ourselves. So the impact and influence that we have on ourselves is exponentially higher than all the people in our life combined. Because if I'm not talking out loud, all the other time in my life is spent talking to myself. But we're not aware of it. We don't pay attention to it. But if we start to become aware and pay attention to it, we oftentimes will find out it's very negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Corey, you're stupid. That was a dumb move. That's not going
like
to work.
Yeah.
They're not going to like you. I'm going to put this music out. Will they like this music? Right? All those negative things that we do all the time. We're not aware that we're doing it. We know that it's happening. We're not deeply and keenly aware of it. I ask that we become more aware. Pay attention to that conversation. And when it's negative, simply stop. Ask yourself, does what I just said to myself serve me? Mm-hmm. If the answer is no, it doesn't serve me, stop that thought. Flip that into something positive. Whatever the reverse of that is. Oh, they're not going to like this music. Hold on, does that serve me? No. What's the reverse? I think they're really going to love it. People are going to love this music. And guess what? Whoever loves it or doesn't, I love it.
Yeah.
And guess that's enough. And whatever goes. So I think this idea of understanding self, having a relationship with self, what is my mind doing on a consistent basis? Having a frame of understanding around that. And then moving that agenda forward on a regular basis, I think really is the resource that we need to engage with.
That's good. Doc, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but we didn't really get into it, this notion of therapy. That can be an intimidating word to some, but it doesn't have to be. I know it's something that we've all sort of tapped into as we talked about. Could you go a little bit more into that? What is therapy? How do people get therapy? What is that? What does that even mean?
Yeah, I think therapy, just a common answer and a common way of engaging with it, is any time that you can engage with others or someone else that you can talk to and share with and get things off of your chest. Mm-hmm. I believe, as a therapist, that therapy doesn't have to be only with a licensed counselor or a licensed therapist. Mm-hmm. That when you call your friend and you're having some struggles and you say, here's what's going on, that's therapeutic in nature, right? So us not being nervous about this therapy as a big, broad thing that we shouldn't engage with, I think that we're already doing therapy. Mm-hmm. There may be moments that having a more specific, licensed, someone that's really trained, like me, that can support you, calls for that therapeutic engagement. So how do you find a therapist? If you go to loveyourmindtoday.org, there are moments where you could look for resources. There's therapist locators. Mm-hmm. I think one thing, a way in which to find therapists, especially in the Black community, because the trust may not be as high, is to ask your friends, have you ever dealt with that? Do you have someone that you would recommend? Because that recommendation, if I rock with you and you recommend somebody, the chances that I'll engage with them is higher. So finding those therapist locators, knowing that therapy is not this daunting thing, and that if we can find, I think one of the struggles with therapy is that many times we can't find someone that looks like us, right? That's a struggle. So even when you look for those therapist locators, you could put in that you're looking for a Black or brown male therapist if that's what you're seeking to get support from.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Jonathan, I think it's time to wrap this thing up. What do you think, man?
Listen, you know what? I have a great therapist. I won't tell you his name because I don't want y'all to, being
stingy with your
therapist. I don't want y'all to overbook him. You know what I'm saying? I like the flexibility that he currently has. But he's a good dude. And so I'm absolutely a proponent of therapy. Listen, thank y'all so much for coming out. This was awesome. You guys are geniuses. You're brilliant. You're people that, we can all look up to, and I really appreciate that. It means the world to me. Now, I want to thank you guys for coming out. This was amazing to me. So I want to see and make sure that it was amazing to you. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a QR code. It's going to ask you some simple questions. Did you like it? Thumbs up, thumbs down, stuff like that. And I want you guys to check it out because, we want to do more stuff like this. Yeah. There's barbershops, but honestly, my barber, he ain't always the greatest person to talk to. He is somebody to talk to. But, sometimes you do need to hear from somebody that's been somewhere. And, anyway. But no, I'm just playing. I love you, Leon. You're the best. But either way, all I'm saying is, this is really important. We want to see if we could do this more often. And we need to hear from you first. But we want to thank, Mr. Brother Joshua DuBois. We want to thank Dr. Corey Yeager. We want to thank Huntsman Mental Health Institute, Ad Council, Values Partnerships. Thank you for doing this. If you guys want to start off this journey where you are really intentional about therapy and mental health, please go to loveyourmindtoday.org. Let's do this thing right, all right? We can do it better, and we can flip it in one generation. This was Breaking Cycles, and maybe we'll do a little bit of music.
Yeah, let's do it,
I almost feel like the title begs
You gotta
somebody to sing
yeah,
something. So we're
on.
going to turn over to him. He's going to sing Joshua DuBois.
All I can do is beatbox. That's what you about to do.
Please don't do it. Please don't do it, Joshua.
And I just appreciate you guys for listening. Fellas, make sure that you realize that before you are a dad, before you are a boss, before you are a king, you're just a human.
Yeah.
You are a son, and there are ways for you to get what you need as a person, even before you get what you need as a doer.
Yeah.
I'm just really glad. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you, man.
for doing it.
Pleasure.
Y'all are the best.
Good
Man.
stuff, baby.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Doc.
Yes, sir.
Didn't I conquer this last year? Tell me what I missed, 'cause I fear that it's coming back up again. Must be something I ate, some song, some show, some hate. The devil wants to extend the game. Free throws, and in the end he wants to make the sequel. 'Cause if he gets another chance, he feels like he can take my joy, my peace, my faith. See, the devil, he learns from your mistakes, even if you don't. He tries to keep us in cycles. He wants to keep us in cycles. I don't know about you, but I'm not going in cycles. I can't stay in cycles. Ooh, so Lord, help me be free from all of my past sin. See, your love is enough to make me new and help me in these cycles. Generational cycles, psychological cycles. I'm not staying in cycles. These cycles of depression, these cycles. I'm not staying in cycles. Up today, down tomorrow, these cycles. I'm not staying in cycles. Yeah, cycles. Here's why. 'Cause there is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every cycle. Yeah.